Welcome to episode 175 of Stageworthy. I'm your host, Phil Rickaby. Stageworthy is a podcast about people in Canadian theatre featuring conversations with actors, directors, playwrights, and more. I don't know about you, but I've been working on a new project as well as sort of an old one. I sort of was feeling that some of my play, The Commandment, was missing a little something. So I went back and I added a little bit. Things that have kind of been after performing it as many times as I had, I sort of realized that there were some holes, some things that needed to be filled. So I filled them, and I think it's pretty good. And then there's this piece that I'm planning to perform in December. And I sort of reached this point where there was this super, super rough draft of it. And I wanted to read that to my collaborator and figure out, you need to read these things. These things need to be, you sort of need to do it in front of somebody. So first I started with the Commandment and the new bits, and he really liked those, and I felt really good about them. They felt really strong to me. And then we got to the super rough draft of the new bit, and it was bad. I mean, there's good to it. There's some good stuff, but I don't think it's certainly not ready for prime time. But reading it out loud kind of taught me enough, in addition to sort of being a little bit disheartening. It's hard to read the rough draft for somebody with all of its holes and imperfections and things like that. It's really difficult to make that sound good. It's a difficult thing, and I certainly felt that. In fact, I sort of was wondering as I went through it, I was sort of like wondering, does he hate this? But I trust him enough that if he absolutely hated it, he would tell me. But it was still a very difficult thing to do, and to actually read it out loud and realize which parts are really good, but really have it hit home which parts are bad. And there's still a lot of work to be done, and so that piece it needs a lot more work. And hopefully, The Commandment. Well, we're still on the waiting list to do that this summer, and so watch my if there's an announcement, I'll put it on my personal Twitter, Insta, and Facebook feed. So watch there if you're interested. But writing is super hard, and putting something out there is super hard. And so I know everybody who creates something, it's a really hard thing to do and to put that out there. So everybody who creates something and puts it on stage or puts it out there is a superhero in my eyes. Do you know Today Ticks? Well, Today Ticks is an app and a website that offers easy and affordable access to a wide variety of must-see cultural performances, from plays and musicals to dance, opera, comedy, immersive experiences, and beyond. So let's open up the Today Ticks app and see what's there this week. There are rush tickets for Suki and Lee's Unsafe at Canadian Stage, as well as tickets to The Little Prince Reimagined at Streetcar Crow's Nest, Bears at Factory Theatre. Oh, and tickets to the new Magic Family Funtown, the new Daniel McIver show. And if you know me at all, you know I'm a big fan of Daniel McIver. Today Ticks makes ticket buying simple, and you can purchase tickets in less than 30 seconds. Get it on iOS and Android, or go to todayticks.com. If you want to drop me a line, remember you can find Stageworthy on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website at stageworthypodcast.com. If you want to drop me a line, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Phil Rickaby, and my website is philrickaby.com. My guests this week are the cast of Scarred Leather, Adrianna Prosser, Caroline Concordia, Jason Martorino, and me. Scarred Leather is part of the Whiskey Ginger Collective's New Works Festival, running from March 19th to the 24th at the Red Sandcastle Theatre in Toronto. Why don't we go around and we'll start on my left and you say your name, and just so that everybody can hear all the voices.
Hello, everyone. My name is Caroline Concordia.
Hi, I'm Adrianna Prosser.
Hi, I'm Jason Martorino.
I'm Phil. So,
we know. know that.
And there might be
I know.
some like doggy cries in the background, which are Bueller and McFly.
They're also guests, but we're not going to be talking to them. They don't have much to say
Thank goodness.
about theater.
About theater specifically.
Yeah, specifically. So we're here because we're talking about Scarred Leather,
Yeah.
which is Adrianna. It's your Western, like, and it's interesting because, and I've been thinking about this a lot for the last little while. Is we don't see a lot of genre on stage. We often don't see a lot of sci-fi, and we don't see a lot of westerns, and we don't see horror so much, unless we're talking about Eldritch Theatre,
Which is also one of my loves.
Yeah.
I'll give you a not so secret. It's because it's bloody expensive. Because you have to not only put up a show, but you also have to be period specific with your costuming. And if you want like weapons and things like that, also period. And then as well, specifically with Westerns, you need permits and you need replicas and you need a gun wrangler if you're going to go full out. So it gets expensive. So that's why you don't see a lot of that, I think. And that the freedom of film, I mean, you still need to do all of those things. But for some reason you see a little bit more in film. I don't know. Is it cheaper to rent a farmer's field and a couple reds than putting it on stage? But yeah, I think it's just whenever you take on a very specific thing and you try to focus on that, it becomes a little expensive.
It's true.
So in other words, please give us money. Please come see our show.
Well, why don't we? Could you talk a little bit about where Scarred Leather comes from, and
Sure.
yeah.
Scarred Leather is a haunted Western dealing with grief and bereavement. And it is my 10-year anniversary dealing with my brother's passing from suicide. So I made a one-woman show called Everything But the Cat. And it toured around, and it's had some play along with some of my suicide prevention workshops, so my education workshops as well. And that was the first year of my bereavement, and dealt with the loss of my brother. And I always knew that I wanted to do something for the 10-year, but I didn't want to pull a Sandra Seamus, even though she's so cool and she really inspired me. Sandra Seamus and oh my goodness, Daniel McIver, both of their one person formats. Her show, My Boyfriend's
Back, and There's Gonna Be Laundry.
Yeah, and then she did My Boyfriend's Back, and There's Laundry, and the cycle continues, which is pun on laundry. I was kind of playing that maybe I would go that way as well, that like Everything But the Cat, and now it's like Everything But My Dogs, because now I have dogs, I don't have a cat. But it felt really forced, and it felt really contrived and whatnot, and I didn't really want to do that. So like, don't force yourself to do things that you don't want to do. And so I love Westerns. My very favorite story from my youth is actually Back to the Future 3. Which a lot of you might be like, that's not a Western. It totally is. It's just not The Quick and the Dead, but also love that too.
It's also not the best of the trilogy, but we won't go there.
Oh,
That's fighting words.
We can open
Fighting
that
words.
can of worms, but
That's when the guns come out and we go
actually come out.
we go for high noon.
Oops.
So yeah.
you knew exactly what you were doing.
Yes, that's how we met, actually. We argued about Back to the Future 3. So isn't that adorable? And we still argue
It was
7
the
years
first
later.
of many times in our relationship where I was right.
But you know what, ladies and gentlemen, he paid for me to meet Christopher Lloyd, so all is forgiven. But my love of Westerns and time travel, and like my history of working in history at museums and stuff, like I really like the genre, the Western, the spaghetti Western, and like just how ridiculous it can get. It is kind of high drama. It's almost Shakespearean at times, and other storytellers have taken advantage of that with like Quentin Tarantino, and you can really push it in genre pieces. And so I thought the way that I wanted to attack my journey through grief and acceptance and whatnot was very much like this cowgirl that is looking for vengeance. She's looking for someone to blame. She's looking for someone to point at her gun, shoot it down, and be like, "Done. It's done. I don't need to do this anymore." Like shoot down her grief, shoot down her emotions. And that's where the story came from. Is that there's this cowgirl. Her name is Red. And she's hunting down her brother's killer, who she believes is her brother's killer. But it's layered with the Victorian time period, and which is kind of like how stigma is restraining us from talking about grief even today. So like there's like societal pressures and understanding or misunderstandings, and then there's also people who want to take advantage of your grief, or like completely misconstrue it into something that can be negative, which is Caroline's character Eliza, where it's just like, no, you really can take your life lessons, and you can do so many things with it. You can blossom and you can grow and you can take those life lessons and be a better person, or you can become like this really stuck in your hate, your grief, your depression. Like you can really burrow into that, and it can be very dark, and it can be very isolating, and you can become very negative and a terrible person.
Yeah, well,
it can eat at you, and that is what some people do. And so I fluctuated between these two, and I would like to say, knock on wood, that I would hope to think that I'm a better person for it. Learning my life lessons through grief and meeting wonderful people, mental health advocates, building my podcast with stories like crazy, and meeting people like Lori, people challenging me to do better, like my partner Jason here, and really try to get back to the community through suicide prevention. That I didn't want it to be so autobiographical and so on the nose, that here we are with a Western to make it a little bit more palatable maybe, and a little bit more fun, dare I say, dealing with such harsh truths as death and suicide, and it becomes a conduit to attack something that we don't necessarily want to meet face on.
In a way, doesn't genre let us deal with things that are uncomfortable, but in a more safe way?
I guess so. Especially, I would say, because I'm really focused on the Western. I guess. Oh, thank you, Bueller. I guess sci-fi and like Star Trek and things like that do that too, because it seems so otherworldly. Because we're not in spaceships and we're not on the back of horses anymore. So there is a distance and a comfort level of like, this is not real life, that we can, allow for, like puppets, like it allows a little bit of distance, and it doesn't hit us as quickly as, like, say, watching the TV show This Is Us, which just formulaically makes us cry every time.
Yeah, that's what its job is to do.
Right.
But I mean, you've got shows like Westworld, which combines science fiction and the Western, and Firefly, which was a Western,
also true,
science fiction. So, it allows us to say more about the world.
Yeah, it really allows us to explore tropes and archetypes that we're used to in a completely different way, and that perhaps, again, I mean, I keep coming back to maybe it's a little bit more palatable because it seems so out there, and it's more entertaining than being so in the nose and in your face. Anybody else?
I don't know. I mean, well, what's words?
I have words.
Please speak those some words.
I find it really interesting, like playing with genre, because of the fact that we know these archetypes so well, and we've grown up with them, and when you take an archetype and throw in something like the themes that are present in this play that you don't generally see explored, especially in a Western. There's this sort of chain reaction. There's this effect of, okay, we're introducing a new situation. We're introducing this idea of bereavement. And so that affects the lead character. But what does that mean in terms of the rest of these archetypes that we're used to seeing in certain roles? And I don't want to be too spoilery. But it reminds me of, there's this sort of ongoing dialogue about superhero movies that are really big in mainstream culture right now. And whenever there's a new superhero movie, there's always the backlash of, oh God, another superhero movie. Yeah. Oh, why do they have to bring that superhero back? And it's like, For the most part, my response to that is I think it's really interesting. I think it's really interesting that Captain America has evolved from, American propaganda to the person who is the voice, criticizing the government in the new Marvel films. And then, and again, you have that chain reaction through all of the different characters, and they're all kind of reimagined by the introduction of new circumstances. And I think, I think this is playing with the Western archetype in a similar sort of way.
Cool.
Yeah.
Because you will definitely find a man in black trope in my play, Scarred Leather, and I look back to Bulldog Tannen, and I look back to Westworld, the Ed Harris character as well.
You go back further than that. You go back to the original Westworld.
Yes,
and,
yes.
The frightening thing about the gunslinger, the man in black gunslinger in that film, was the fact that he didn't say anything.
Yeah.
He just
kill.
You.
Yeah.
Yul Brynner in that movie just walked, and it was terrifying. We have some dogs desperate for attention.
They have some feels and thoughts on
They
this.
have also thoughts about...
In the original draft, I actually cast my dog.
Oh.
And then I realized he wouldn't... He's not. He's going to be like, where's my trailer? Where's my dog bones?
So you're saying he's a diva?
He was going to be too much of a diva, but I wanted him to find the original... The concept was that there was a dead body on stage when the audience came in, and it's like this crumpled, disheveled body of a corpse, and that a dog comes in, snuffs around, and then your character comes in smoking, and then just like sees the body and like calling the dog and being like, nah, shit, and like flicks off the cigarette, and then like fireman carries the dead body off, and then everybody's like, what is happening? And that would be like the hook.
Sure, except that your dog probably would not have done any of the things that you wanted.
No, you have to carry.
And
you'd
have
100 pounds.
I have to carry some person on my back and a dog, chasing around a dog. No.
What about the bit with the dog, Will?
What about the bit with the dog? Yeah.
So then I canned that really quickly. My dramaturg, who is not here, Eric Woolfe, was like, what's with the bit with the dog?
Yeah.
Get it out.
Gotta go. I really like how you play with identity without giving any spoilers away, but that is kind of my favorite. One of my favorite elements about this piece is your character. You're gonna have to come see it to find out, but how, I don't want to use any spoiler words, but just kind of how you define yourself.
Like read the character?
Yes.
Yeah.
I really love that, and I'm excited to see people's kind of reactions to that.
It's interesting. I was looking at the new draft, and now that there's some more elements, and now everybody has a vision of themselves.
That's more clear?
No, just like everybody has a vision of themselves, and then there's the way that other people see them, or the actual truth, right? And so everybody in it has the way they want to be seen and the way that they are seen.
Welcome to grief.
Well, yes, I know.
And like the masks that we wear to be like, I am in this situation, so I will put on this mask. So I'm really glad that that's coming across. And I also think that it's interesting that the people who have been reading the characters, I am very happy to say that it passes the Bechdel test. It is women-centric, women-heavy dialogue. Women talk more than men, and we also talk about not painting our fingernails and about winning back the hero. We are the hero, the two women in the story. And that I really think it's interesting that whoever's reading it, I've had a couple people put their eyes over it, that they're always like, are they a thing? Are they lady lovers?
They do flirt a little.
And I'm like, and it's just like, I'm not saying yes or no, because at the end of the day, people use sex as a weapon, as a tactic. And I think it's completely reasonable that you would use that at any time that benefits you, whether it's a man, woman, they, them, right? Yeah. Theydies and gentle thems. So I say, if that's what you see, you go with it. Yeah. I like it.
Why don't we take? Adrianna, you've been on a couple of times. We've talked
I'm a little spoiled.
We've talked at length about theater and publicity and things like that. Jason and Caroline have not. So I want to talk to you guys about your theater origin stories. Whoever wants to go first, like, what was your first exposure to theater, the arts, that made you want to do it?
I'll go first. Well, I was very fortunate to be brought up seeing a lot of theater. As I was telling you earlier, I went through my huge, massive 10-pound box of play programs that I've been hoarding and keeping since I started seeing, my parents started taking me to theater. So that was kind of our thing. We didn't really go on big vacations, but I'm from Hamilton, so we would come to the big city, come to Toronto to see something. We'd go to Niagara-on-the-Lake to see some things. When I was seven or eight, my parents put me into the Theater Aquarius summer program. Have you heard of that? It's like, it's a big thing in Hamilton. So pretty much did that my whole childhood, a month every summer. Classes, meeting people. And I kind of felt like the bug, like the kids that were there that had agents. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do that. Like, I want to be on TV. I want to do these things. But my parents made it very clear, there will be no business. We want you to have a childhood. Like, don't even think about getting an agent until much later. So I already knew that, and I wasn't going to fight them. I was not a rebellious child. So I just stuck to my summer theater. I remember in grade 3 being in a play in school. It's a Jungle Out There. It was like a musical, and just like having a great time and loving it. And then when I was going into high school, the theater summer program, you got to participate in a full-scale musical. So everyone, the crew, everyone was professional except for the actors, the kids. Wow. So my first play was Fame. I was just a background person. So I kind of grew up thinking I was going to do musical theater. I love singing and dancing. I was taking dancing classes, some singing classes. And then when it came to apply for schools and apply to Sheridan and this and that, I was like, oh, I actually don't know these things. I don't know how to read and write music. People make their lives singing and dancing, where for me it was kind of more of a hobby. Like, I liked it. And then I realized, oh, my career is not going to be musical theater. My heart broke a little bit, but I quickly realized that I can still do theater and I can still do film, TV, commercial. So I don't remember the pinpoint moment where I was like, this is going to be it, but I kind of always had it inside me and always appreciated going to the theater, always felt very comfortable in the audience, felt comfortable on stage. I love just like being a part of something that's bigger than myself. Like, the community aspect was huge for me growing up. All my summers spent with people that I never would have met outside of my regular friend group. So it was all different cultures and people and experiences, and that really shaped me kind of growing up and being able to kind of, at a very young age, deal with all sorts of different kinds of people. Didn't even think anything of it. Like, had a gay best friend when I was 7. Didn't know really at the time, but just like kind of that exposure to everybody and anything. And and we kind of talked about this before we started rolling, but I kind of lost a little bit of love for theater at a point, with kind of seeing maybe too much theater and supporting too many friends, and kind of was like, you know what? Not every Shakespeare production is going to be worthwhile to sit through, or every play is kind of worth your time and energy and money. And it's great to be supportive, but then you don't want to feel burnt out from it.
There's an unfortunate thing that often happens in indie theater, and you have, especially among people who are high producers of theater, whether they're acting a lot of stuff or things like that, you end up selling to the same people all the time. It's like
overexposure.
You're fundraising or whatever, like you're asking the same people for money all the time, and at a certain point it becomes too much.
And like, I did really love the classical, or the classics like Annie and Chorus Line, and like I saw all those growing up too, and then getting into university and kind of getting the black box experience, and like first being exposed to like the alternative theater and like the really gritty stuff and the sex, and like just how you could bring all these elements together and really create an experience. And that's something that I crave the most when I go to theater now, is like something outside of the box, and something that's going to be, you don't know what you're going to get or what to expect.
When you mentioned like the people who had the bug and things like that, for you, did that happen when you were in the Theater Aquarius courses, or did that happen, had you caught the bug before you went to those?
No, I probably didn't even know how that would work. But once I kind of heard like, oh, you can get an agent, and I kind of understood what that meant, and like getting opportunities, and like and then in my real life, actually getting to the age where, okay, I'm done school, I'm going to pursue this professionally. Then it was trying to find an agent for years and years, and that time was forever. And then it's like, okay, then you just want the auditions, and then you just want to book things. So it's like this constant like climb.
Business.
Yeah.
Did you find that like, what was my question here? Do you remember the first show that you saw?
I don't know for sure. I want to say maybe it was Annie.
Okay.
Probably something super like family friendly when I was just a little pup.
Sure.
You know, but yeah, I realized actually in the last couple of years of not focusing on theater, that getting back to theater is actually something that makes you feel most like an actor, and being able to spend time on a character. And that's something that I think I used to take for granted. And stepping away from theater for a while, and now it's definitely something I crave to do more as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Jason.
Yeah.
Your acting bug / theater origin story, where did it come from for you?
Junior high school. I had never really done much in the way of theater, and we had a drama teacher. We had to take drama in grades 7, 8, and 9, or at least in grades 7, 8. And the drama teacher there, his name was Mr. Cal, and he was really cool. And he was also an excellent volleyball coach, and he coached us on the volleyball team too. Just an interesting tidbit. I love volleyball.
A double threat.
But yeah, and so he'd had us doing scenes from from one act plays and that sort of thing, and getting us to write monologues, and I really enjoyed it. And I remember this one time, I think it was in 1993, if I'm not mistaken, and we had a field trip through that class to go and see Romeo and Juliet at the Stratford Festival, and that was the one with Anthony Cimolino as Romeo, Megan Follows as Juliet. And I remember Mr. Cal was telling us, getting us ready for the trip, and he was telling us about how Mercutio was played by this actor that had really become well known at Stratford, whose name was Colin Feore. And at the time, okay, fine, there's some actor, whatever. And I remember us going there, and it was great. I really enjoyed the show, but then Colin Feore comes on, and he launches into the Queen Mab speech, and it's like, oh, this is what the big deal's about. Yes. And it was just so consummately beautiful what he was doing. The physicality and the attention to words and all that sort of thing. And as I did more and more theater and through that and a little bit doing the odd audition for some Stage Kids company and stuff like that when I was younger, which I was never very successful in. But I stuck to the drama lessons, and I remember I was doing one of Romeo's monologues. I think it was in maybe grade 10 drama class, and it was, I'd grown to love the attention to words in Shakespeare so much, and the imagery, and I think it was through that I discovered that there was more to being a straight male than having a 90 mile per hour fastball sort of thing, and being able to throw a good hip check. And since then it's been kind of, there was always kind of this duality that I really wanted to, I loved sports and all that sort of thing. And I wasn't all that good at it, but I was, I guess, relatively at some point insightful to the point that my teachers had some confidence in me as an actor. And then so, from there I went I applied to York University Theatre School, and that summer I did a production of Taming of the Shrew. That was supposed to tour but didn't.
I think we've all had those.
Yeah, that was my first exposure to the fact that quite often these shows like that productions don't go exactly as you think they're going to. But it was still a great production, and I worked with some really fun people on that, and from then I was also at the same time bitten with the opera bug, so I ended up going from theater school to opera school, and then got out and got an agent, and found that film and television seemed to like me better than anything else, and it was something that I felt I had the most to contribute to. So that's where I've kind of ended up.
Cool.
Yeah.
How long has it been since you did a stage show? And I'll ask you too, because you do.
For me, it's been 5 years.
5 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the last stage show I did was a sung stage show. It was for Toronto Operetta Theatre. Yeah, for Bill Silva.
This will be really cool. This will be really fun.
I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Well, it's great to stretch back out, right? Because, I mean, film and television, it's a different... well, it doesn't have to be a different approach, but it for me, it's tended to be simply because I went from theater school to opera school, and then I was talking like this all the time. And you don't get film and TV jobs if you talk like that all the time. So I had to learn to bring it back. So it's a different sort of balance of skills.
Yeah.
And it's interesting and it will become more and more interesting to have to get further in touch with those and to be put on the spot and to produce.
Yeah.
So
I've always thought of theater and the film television thing as a different it as a different approach as well, just because you can always tell the people who are mostly theater people when they put them on TV. They go a little big there.
Yeah.
A little over the top.
But complementary skills.
Yeah.
Because I find my whole theater background prepared me for commercial auditions and being able to improv and just kind of, the show must go on, that mentality.
Yeah.
I feel like theater trained people definitely have a very strong work ethic.
Absolutely.
Just the amount of hours you put in. And
More stamina.
Yeah.
Stamina,
I do also
yes.
feel like the downside, I think the reason why that happens a lot is because you don't really get to rehearse for TV and film. And the one time I did a film, and it's probably the only time it's ever turned out really good, is we did a lot of rehearsal. And so we all started out really big. You get that out, so you're exploring it, and then you got to rein it in. And we all did that together because we were all theater people and not film people. And I think that a lot of times when we experience that sort of thing, it's because we're just sort of dropped in to not, and we don't get to rehearse with other people. And it's like, all right, doing your thing in 5 minutes. I hope you're ready. You know?
Yeah.
Well, it's also like a matter of the style of the production too, and the feel that you're creating. I mean, I've seen movies where there was what I would consider theatrical acting, but it made perfect sense because everybody knew what movie they were in.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
But I don't think that a person should have to hold back. I just think maybe it comes down to the writer and the director and them communicating their vision accurately enough, or hiring the right people who just walk into the audition room and know, or are on the same page with them in terms of the style of the production.
I mean, that's certainly super important. I remember walking into a film audition once. It was a really shitty film, but I had misjudged from the script what they were going for, because to me the script was very clearly a tongue-in-cheek sort of like cheesy in the style of like a Big Trouble in Little China sort of thing, fun romp, and they were very serious about it.
Oh no.
When I voiced my opinion about how awesome I thought it was that they were doing this like as sort of like a tongue-in-cheek romp they were like, no. I'm not getting casted.
No.
So the unicorn's a real unicorn.
Yeah. So in terms of this particular show, this is going to be sort of interesting because we're sort of exploring, because it's early days and it's brand spanking new.
Draft 7, baby.
Draft 7. Who knows how many drafts we'll end up
Please,
with?
not many more.
Could be more. How much? Because we want to do it as a staged reading, but how much it's staged will be sort of dependent on a number of factors.
How many drafts we have to get through. When I did Everything But the Cat, I worked on it for over a year, and I incubated it with puppeteers, with Bricketeer Puppetry, and with James and Gray, and it was something that never really had a due date. And so I really wanted to talk about the Whiskey Ginger Collective that sparked this fire. So Chloe Whitehorn was just like, we're in a theater troupe, or we're in a theater collective. And I went, we are? And
did she talk to other people before she told you that you were in it, or do you think that she just like told everybody else that they were just in this.
It was almost like playing Red Rover, and she called Adri over, and and I was just like, yeah, man, yeah, I want to be with these individuals. Like, these sound cool. So we're a group of Celtic Canadians, Celtic identified Canadians, so Scottish, Irish, Welsh, and we are specifically creating theater through that lens, and like unabashedly, like completely talking about that sort of thing. So I thought that it was really important to have a redheaded protagonist, played with the idea of her having, you know, an Irish accent, because a lot of the new settlers here in Canada were Irish from the Irish famine, and that playing that it is in Upper Canada and whatnot, and that the Whiskey Ginger Collective is about incubating these types of stories, not necessarily specific about the Celtic experience, but that they're coming from this interesting niche, this group of, we're all gingers, and Rosemary owns the Red Sandcastle Theatre, and she's also out in Kingston, and she's also a creator. She does the 24-hour play.
Thousand Monkeys 24-hour playwriting festival.
And that's a great event to get people percolating and like creating and stuff like that, because deadlines can really push you in a great way.
Yes, they can. They can also be super terrifying.
I'm going with column A and B, because I've never worked. That's not true. I have worked to a deadline. I've done the Sonnet show with Humber River Shakespeare Company, that they used to do it at Montgomery's Inn, and that we would be like given a room and given like a 2 lines from a sonnet kind of thing, and you'd be like, go make a show, and it needs to be less than like 15 minutes, and that was a really cool thing. So things like that, and that Whiskey Ginger Collective, we were like, okay, what do we want to do? And it's like, well, we want to make new stuff. We want to make stuff that is appealing to us, like that makes us passionate.
Right.
And so this New Works Festival really is just a smattering of what we're excited to be creating right now. And this is what I'm excited about, is that I could have gone with something that I already had half written, or something that, you know, maybe remount Everything But the Cat. I don't know.
You decided to go.
No, I said no, sir.
Something new.
No, sir.
New.
Something new.
Amazing.
Something that I was like really passionate about, and I kept on shelving and like procrastinating, because it is hard to go there in this subject matter, and it's important to me, and I think it's important to continue that conversation, however we may have it, whether it's with cowboy hats or, you know, in the classroom. So this is a challenge. It's a challenge.
You're meeting it, though.
Woo!
And I one day want to see the film version of this, too.
I kind of do, too, because, spoiler alert, it's a haunted Western, and there be ghosts.
Yeah.
What? So I hope the ghosts make the cut past draft 7. Well, because I've also asked.
Max, to be specific, you've cut
a lot of my
characters.
Babies. Yeah, I've cut them. I've killed them.
You've killed babies all
figuratively
over the place
and literally.
Yeah.
And I'm in talks with Rapier Wit right now, stage and film, to get guns into this show legitimately. Don't worry, RCMP. And just like how can we complement the story with like how much do we push the Western and then how much do we push the story and the characters, and I'm really thankful to have all of you guys at the table, because Phil, we haven't talked about the fact that you're playing one of these characters, and he has gone from like I'm the no-name bartender just squeaking glasses.
He was originally the guy who stood there sort of like drying a glass.
Right, like just like set piece and like quintessential bar, like the tavern, the saloon is just so quintessential to the Western experience. I'm like, well, I gotta have a bartender. And then Eric, again, was just like, amp it up. If he's there, you gotta give him a reason. And now you gotta give him a backstory. Ooh, give him a secret. And it's just like, oh my God. So your character has really come a long way, and I'm really excited for that too.
Yeah. There's things that I want to talk about, but they're kind of spoilery, so I'm not gonna.
I mean, how spoilery?
I mean, the thing is that I think it's best to leave the things that can be spoiled.
I do
to
like
not be spoiled.
I do want to. I want to surprise people.
Yeah.
I want them to have an experience. Like I know that we've talked in the past about theater as an experience and theater as spectacle.
Sure.
And that you can't get spectacle through a movie screen. In it, like
Not
that,
in the same way.
Not in the same way. You can.
You can, but I think that we don't react to it in the same way.
Than a human breathing person.
Yeah.
That if you were to stand up and be like, "Hey," you're going to interrupt the show. You're a part of that, and like to be in the room, and to know that these people have like gone through this. Anyway, like that magic is lightning in a bottle kind of stuff that theater can do.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to do, but you can.
Yeah.
And I hope that we have little lightning moments in this show, even if it's just a staged reading this time around.
Mm-hmm.
Bueller agrees.
Yes, of course. I mean, the puppies' opinions also count.
Puppies are people too.
Puppies are people too. Interesting question. Do you guys remember what the first Western you saw was?
Oh boy.
I mean, Back to the Future.
I mean,
for me.
Is that really the first Western you ever saw?
Yeah. And then I think the next one that I remember is The Quick and the Dead with Sharon Stone and Baby DiCaprio, because that was like 1995. Because I think my mom let me watch Back to the Future because Back to the Future.
Right.
And then it was like, you can't watch any of these Clint Eastwood movies. Like, my daughter likes Westerns. What do you... No, it's so many dead people and guns and violence and no. So I think by the time like 1995 rolls around, I'm like, a tween and I'm like, I'm going to watch it anyway. And Sharon Stone. But yeah, how about you guys?
I just have flashes in my memory of like scruffy men gritting their teeth and shooting at each other from various spaghetti westerns throughout the first like 15 years of my life. But yeah, I think maybe the first time I actually sat down and watched one, it might have been Back to the Future 3. But the first like legitimate western that I ever sat down and enjoyed was Unforgiven. And then it was after that I was like that there were, I started watching other ones, but Unforgiven is pretty awesome.
Pretty awesome.
I know some people don't like it, but
You looking at me?
no, you're dramaturg.
Oh.
He hates Unforgiven.
Eric doesn't like it.
I mean, I get that the end kind of negates a lot of the point. But.
Yeah, I don't remember. But probably Back to the Future 3, because I remember watching those a lot. Bill and Ted, they didn't have any Western elements. And
They did have Billy the Kid.
They did have Billy the Kid, yeah.
I remember that. I don't think that counts. But,
Not really. That's only a tenth of the movie.
Yeah.
And Phil?
I don't know if you count Little House on the Prairie as a Western.
That's an interesting.
Interesting. Well, then, yeah, me too. And,
Because-
is Anne of Green Gables a Western? Because it's the 1800s. And
There would be an Eastern.
Oh, that's true. That's true. That's true. Maritimes.
Yeah. But I think if Little House on the Prairie is a Western, then that was really the first Western. And there may have been some random things on TV on Saturdays that I saw.
Yeah.
But, I was a child in the 70s, so we were closer to the Bonanza years than anything else. So.
I'm gonna have to get on that Little House bandwagon too.
Yeah.
I grew up on that show.
Yeah.
Every night at 6 p.m.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that was my upbringing.
Yeah.
I knew I liked you.
I think anybody who grew up at that time, that was like, that was the must-see TV of those days.
It was really good. It was really good.
But the 90s had a big insurgence of Westerns when you go back, right? Like Tombstone and The Quick and the Dead. And...
In terms of movies,
yeah. That's what I'm saying, yeah.
But Westerns didn't we didn't see them on TV, I think, anymore. They sort of had gone to the movies.
That's true.
And they were absent from TV, whereas there was a time when TV was Western.
Like Howdy Doody Time.
Oh, yeah.
And the Lone Ranger.
The Lone Ranger. Yeah. Classic.
But it's been a good excuse to look up all these movies and rewatch The Quick and the Dead. That was amazing. I had no idea.
Her. I have a special spot for Tombstone. I love snippy, witty Val Kilmer.
Oh, yeah.
I love him. Not so much Maverick, but Jodie Foster is pretty great in it. Right? Like all of these things, I really just like I think people are going to be like, she's so basic bitch about her Westerns. But I do. I've seen all of my Clint Eastwood essentials as well. But I don't know. I guess maybe because, I did see them while I was growing up. So, there is that nostalgia for me.
Well, Quick and the Dead was fun because it took all of those archetypes and it does play with them, and it's a pretty broad sort of. They play with it, the archetypes or the whole Western idea, in pretty broad terms, and sometimes it's in light of the sort of political climate of our current times, it's a little bit uncomfortable to watch at times, but it still is, assuming you're not taking it too seriously, it's still a lot of fun.
Well, I think that's the thing is if you take the Western too seriously, then you suck all of the fun out of it, and there's got to be some fun. I mean, it is in a lot of ways pretty Shakespearean. You get to, you still have a duel, right?
Yep.
I mean, maybe not sword fighting, but it's still a duel.
Totally.
So it's always fun.
Absolutely, and the stakes are always so high. It's so amped,
absolutely.
like it's so soap opera.
It's got to, but you know what? That's why it's got to be, and it's got to be life or death, because otherwise,
Yeah.
Why give a shit?
And I think that's why Scarred Leather really works in the Western, because it is really high stakes, and it is really like life or death situations that really propel all of these characters. The thing that made me think that I could do a haunted Western was, I don't know if you remember years and years ago at, I believe it was Soul Pepper, The Mill, and it was a 3-part trilogy.
Oh, geez. I do vaguely remember that.
Yeah.
It was like...
It was cool.
I didn't actually see it.
I saw 2 of the 3 parts, and it was, one of them was set in like the 1800s and whatnot, and that it was this haunting, and they actually had a woman in a rig where she was like the Ring, like she went backwards up the wall, like she was possessed and stuff. Wow. Yeah, it was so cool.
Outdoors in the distillery.
I don't know if it was outdoors, but it's in the distillery. That's where it was, and it was about this haunted place, this haunted barn, and it was like in 3 different timelines, right? Like that, it was like past, present, and future or something. And like the past one was, everybody's in bonnets, and it's like, again, like that Western feel and stuff like that, and rifles and everything like that. And I was just, yes, you don't see, like we were saying before, we don't see this very often on stage. And it was really cool to see not only hauntings and horror, which we, again, very rarely see, but again, a period piece. So this is my thank you to The Mill and their creators, because I was like, yes, I pocket that for later. This is cool.
Is there a genre that you think we don't see often on stage, but that you would love to see on stage?
Other than more Westerns?
I'm a horror nerd, so I would like to be able to say that I've seen more theater than I actually have, but I know that there are some horror plays out there, but for the most part, I've never been to see. Aside from Eldritch Theatre, who did, and Eric is an extremely talented creator in terms of the macabre in terms of theater. But outside of that, I don't think that I've really seen anything that was really scary in the way that, playing with the haunted house and ghost archetypes and that sort of thing that we generally associate with mainstream horror.
It's interesting though, yeah, because theater used to be where we went for horror. If you talk about, in when Bram Stoker's Dracula was first performed on stage, and people were terrified by it.
And Dickens just walking around being like, "Listen to my latest ghost story."
Yeah, well, yeah,
right. Yeah. That was his deal.
Yeah.
When was Dracula produced as a play?
Bram Stoker alternately produced it as a book and a play. He wrote a play version as well.
Oh man.
And Jekyll and Hyde was also performed on stage. The mysterious transformation and all that stuff. So there's like horror theater was where we went for horror.
Yeah.
And now we don't anymore. I think because we limit ourselves in what we think horror is, because film has taken over the horror genre.
It's much easier to make a ghost in film land than it is in theater land, that's for sure. Also what I'm finding right now.
Yeah.
Making the show.
Yeah. That said, there was a production of Titus Andronicus at Shakespeare's Globe a few years ago, where when Lavinia, after
the hands in the mouth thing,
when she came out on stage, people were fainting because they went with realistic makeup and shit. So
that is definitely the definition of horrific.
Yeah. But it's still something that we rarely see.
Yeah.
How about you? What would you like to see on stage?
I think it exists. I just haven't seen it in a while, but more like multimedia. Like I want.
Oh, I love that stuff.
More art and theater, more experience.
I've seen a number of like for myself. I've seen multimedia like video used a lot. I've also not seen it used not particularly well because I feel like a lot of times when we're using video, we're doing something that would be more effective presented on stage. Like I've seen a number of times when video is used to present a monologue.
Right.
And that should just be put on stage. Like don't put that on video because I don't connect with the video in the same way as I do on stage. But like if you can really connect with video, like the way that we can do video mapping now, like have people interact with video elements,
or even just for like location or background or things to kind of make the experience a little more visceral.
Yeah, I'm really interested in where VR and AR will now take us. So there's rumblings that that this show might not stay this way with an ensemble cast, but that could be turned into a not so one woman, which is again something that I actually taglined Everything But the Cat. That Everything But the Cat, I interact with voiceovers and projections of the so-called other actors, and that's why I call it a not so one woman. And then I wanted to take it farther this time, but I don't know how to. My brain can't get there. But the idea is that all of your characters are haunts. Like that you are haunting Red and that the audience needs to, I don't know, have glasses or use their phone to find the ghosts in the room and stuff like that. And it just sounds really cool. But at the end of the day, it's like you're saying, like, will that take away from the connection? Is that just cool for the sake of being cool? Like, how can it complement what's happening rather than just be a cool gimmick?
Yeah. And I think that's the trick is like when you're going to throw in that kind of multimedia stuff, it has to belong and it can't just be tacked on.
Yeah.
I always think of like something that was tacked on like when a number of theaters were experimenting with tweet seats.
Oh, what's that?
They would put a section and there's like, these are the people who can use their phones and tweet the show.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. It was like, well, why? Like
they were like live tweeting
a show that I could then watch, or
like hashtag what's with Ophelia.
Yeah,
interesting.
I don't know. It was very much like, and it didn't last long at all because I think that a number of theaters were like, yeah, this will connect us with people who are using the internet and stuff, and it just ended up being like
distraction.
It was very much a distraction because you know what's really distracting? A bunch of like bright phones over in the corner. You just end up looking at those.
Yeah, that would drive me crazy.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But don't you think that there's something? I mean, I get that. It's much more valuable if you have a reason to do anything, to have a character or to stage in a certain way or something like that. But there is just something to the sensual experience that could add. I don't know. I mean, I guess, it comes down to the question of why you're doing it and how you implement it. But,
well, that's the thing. Is it becomes a matter of, and also like I remember I went to see a show I think with you last year where one of the things they were doing was they were supposed to have like these bone conducting headsets. The audience would wear. They would connect them with some of the audio, but they couldn't get it to work. But that was one of the things that they had talked up about the show was like, oh, people are going to get these bone conducting things. I was like, that's going to be really cool. And then they were like, well, that didn't actually end up working, so we're not going to do it.
Yeah, if you're going to add tech, it has to like,
you have to
work.
make sure that, you can't like talk it up beforehand. But it's the kind of thing, like that kind of AR sort of thing could be good as long as it's not distracting.
Yeah.
You know? So it's hard
takes
to know
you out.
what the way to do it is.
Yeah, because like I always go back to one of my very favoriteest theater experiences was Sleep No More, and the element of exploration and that I didn't need to follow something linearly. I wasn't sitting in a dark place watching actors on stage, that I was participatory. And it's just like, I don't have money to buy 2 warehouses and furnish that and get a cast of 28.
Yeah.
Like, like that is pie in sky, and that is like that is very much lightning in a bottle that they got to create that. And it's like, how can I make stories in such a way that for me and the type of reach that I have, saying like indie, off Toronto kind of creation, or fringe, or something that's travel worthy and tourists and tours that I tour it. Thank you, words. And that's why I go to this like AR thing, app thing, or like something that's handheld, and that it's in the agency of the audience. I'm interested in the agency of the audience to choose how they explore my narrative. Yeah. That is exciting. Sure. That is cool. How do you do it?
Well, that's the question, is how do you do that? And then the fact that somebody's got their phone out and is doing this while the show's going on doesn't become...
right?
And I'm moving my hand around behind me, because this is an audio medium. Like moving around like that.
Yeah.
It's not distracting for the rest of the audience.
Because like that's how my brain goes. Is like, it's like the Pokemon thing where you're looking for the trigger. You're looking for the thing that gives the sensor to the AR to move the story. And it's like, but then how? What? That's cool, but and yeah. So I think that there's a transitory time right now where we are either really like hyper, like you were saying, like sense-based, like sensual-based, that we want to touch stuff, we want to be in the show with them. And then there's this other pull of like, but tech is becoming really cool and more accessible, like that you can download an app for $1 instead of $500 or whatever, like, you know, like building stuff on Google Play and stuff.
It's almost the kind of thing that if you were to take it out of a strictly theater setting, so people are not necessarily sitting in a group.
Yeah.
But if they can like move around the room.
And this is where my mind goes, I really like site specific. A lot of the things that I've created have been site specific. One of the very first plays, possibly my very first play, was a 5-hour exploratory day where I was Catherine Flynn, and I was the Irish servant to Gibson House Museum. You met me at the front door, and I took you through my day working as an 1850s Irish immigrant. And they made food. They ended up eating the food that they made over a hearth fire. They like did the laundry with me. We sat and had tea midday, and I told them the story of my immigration and the Irish famine. And it was a 5-hour epic. And it's sold out. Who are you people? I love you. But that, again, you want that experience, and you want something more than a passive story. Like that, to be a passive audience member. And I'm hungry for that. I don't know if you are listening to this and you are also a creator and you are hungry for these things too. Let's make stuff. You know, let's groove with the Whiskey Ginger Collective.
I actually would love to have more instances where people where creatives get together and just talk about
and just jam
shit, and like, oh no, but if you were to do this, and like build on each other, I think that would be that's sort of something we don't do,
because you can only know what you know until somebody says, well, there's an app for that, or there's a jam for that. I know a guy who I know a girl who
and those only happen like when you get a bunch of people sitting around talking about
a podcast,
all kinds of things.
like right now.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you're listening to this, please comment with like where people are doing their creative jams, because I know that there's a couple. There's like something called the Monday Nighters. There's cold reads, but like I don't know. Like, are there more free flow kind of creative talks happening?
Yeah, a lot of those the cold reads, the sing for your supper, that sort of thing. They're pretty structured, where it's like you're reading from a new thing rather than people sort of sitting around jamming or talking about stuff.
That usually happens at the bar after those sorts of meetups. In my experience.
Except that I'm always on my way out after, because I have a day job, and so I have to. Those things happen.
So that's why I don't do those things.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. All the good stuff happens when I need to be going home.
Because your brain starts to turn off, and it's like, I can't.
Like, bedtime.
Time for bed.
Yeah. So, in terms of the whiskey ginger thing, I would say whisker gingy, but that's like whatever.
Not at all what we're doing here. That sounds like a Santa Claus thing. I don't know. Kris Kringle?
Maybe. That's another project.
In another dimension.
Yes. So when is that happening?
The Whiskey Ginger Collective New Works Festival is March 19th through the 24th. Tickets are on sale through our website, whiskeygingercollective.org. And you can find us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And we have some incentives. We've got Pay What You Can Tuesdays and Sunday. You can even reserve your Pay What You Can seat for only $5 online. $15 arts worker, because hey, aren't we all? And $20 anytime seats for the everybody's. And you know, if any of these things, if you want to know more about what's happening with the other playwrights, it sounds like our tagline is raise a glass, raise the dead. Yeah, so 3 shows and 3 shots in one night.
Okay.
I made that up myself. And because it's, they're all these new works by Chloe and Kieran, and Rosemary is hosting us at the Red Sandcastle. So it's going to be a mixed bag of pretty awesome stuff, I got to say.
Sounds good. Awesome. Thanks a lot, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been a Homebody Productions production.